Wake up at 5 a.m. Eat, brush, and lock the door on my way out. Walk down the street. Turn the corner. Wait for the bus. Get on the bus.
To eat.
Get a seat in the back. Get off the bus. Walk to the next stop. Wait for the next bus. Get off the next bus, walk to the next stop, and wait for the next bus. This one's a little nicer though. Blue light so you don't fall asleep. Watch the sunrise. Watch the sunrise higher. Watch the sky light up. Watch the trees. Watch the buildings. Just in time for my 7:30 class. This was my daily commute to university for at least 3 years. I shortened that clip to half a minute, but that one-way trip took over 2.5 hours, and that's assuming all the buses were on schedule. If a bus arrives earlier than expected and you miss it, your commute routine can be completely disrupted. And the same could be said if that same bus breaks down on the side of the road, or if that bus is overcrowded and you're forced to take the next one. There are a lot of legitimate reasons why someone would not want to regularly take the bus. But the point I want to make here isn't that buses are inefficient and need to be done away with. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Buses are inefficient and need to be improved. The reason I vouch for the constructive option over the destructive one is simple. People need buses. I can say with confidence that I needed the buses for those 3 years I attended university, but don't mistake this with the idea that I liked being on those buses. I didn't. I much would have preferred to have rented a place nearby and commuted to school by walking, and often my friends would ask me why I didn't just drive to school, or better yet, just choose a school closer to my home, or why stop there? Don't go to school at all. Then you don't have to commute anywhere. Or here's an idea, just don't have a home. Then you can commute anywhere. It's a zero distance all the time. Sorry. It's a sensitive topic. But to answer any of these suggestions, I had a set of circumstances where this was calculated to be the most practical solution. And the crazy part is that I wasn't alone. It doesn't show in the clips because I wasn't gonna film strangers on a bus, but I recognized several people over those 3 years who did the exact same commute that I did. Maybe they took one less bus or got on a different stop, but we all started in one city and spent 2 hours traveling to another, every single day. And I would often see them on the same bus going home. Now, I don't know why those people chose to take this path. That's their business. But the important thing to take away from this story is that people need buses. This bus video isn't like my previous ones, in that I can't just point at a spreadsheet and make a sweeping average claiming that buses are a social necessity. Instead, I'll be taking bits and pieces of information and sewing them together to form my argument. The first of which I've already framed as my own personal story and observations. The next item of evidence I have to present are bus fares. These are the bus fares presented by the My Way Transit Agency website. If you take the bus regularly, you should recognize something familiar here. Not the prices, those change for every transit system, but the pricing pattern. The cost to take a bus for a youth, senior, and people with disabilities are always reduced. You can see the same pattern here in the Broward County transit system mentioned in the last video. The reason behind this pricing pattern is simple. That demographic of customers are the ones most likely not to have access to a car. Therefore, they are dependent on public transportation for their mobility needs. But then you say, if those people are more likely to take the bus, then shouldn't you want to increase the fares instead of reducing them to make a profit? And I hear you. And that is a terrible way of thinking. What are you, a bus scalper or something? Public transit is first and foremost a public service, not a private business, with some notable exceptions. But the fact of the matter is that the vast majority of transit agencies don't turn a profit, and they know that. Organizations like My Way operate with the intent of serving the largest number of people instead of operating like a business to make a profit. This is evident by the fact that their ridership fare revenue only covers slightly less than half the operational cost, with the rest being subsidized by government-levied taxes. Some might raise opposition to this, calling it a drain of taxpayer money, especially from people who don't take the bus and will never utilize these services. But the reason this cost can be justified by the government is because, while it may lose money in isolation, in relation to its connected economy, the services it provides greatly outweigh the resources it consumes. Youths use the bus to get to school or co-op work, as well as seniors and people with disabilities. In short, it allows people a cost-effective transportation alternative to serve the workforce, among other things. And perhaps the last item of evidence I have to offer is an analysis of bus design, particularly how it's designed to accommodate people with impairments and disabilities. Buses often come with an area where a bench can be lifted to make space for a wheelchair or mobility cart to be secured. I also often see people use this area to sit with an infant stroller. But before a wheelchair can even be secured, it has to get on the bus, which is where a ramp comes in. In the same model, an extending and kneeling ramp is installed to allow for passengers to board and exit the vehicle. And for people with poor or no vision, stop names are always announced clearly on the speaker so people are aware of where they are and when they should get off. And to complement all these features, every bus is operated by a friendly and charismatic bus driver. I'm kidding, of course, most of them are absolute monsters. Except for Tom on Route 61, he was the best. To conclude, people often come from widely varying situations and circumstances, and buses help that niche demographic. In most cases, they are an absolute necessity for people who are too young or too old, or physically or financially unable to access a car for their transportation needs. There isn't so much a social cost that I promise to discuss as much as I vouched for a social boost to the economy, but if in terms of cost, as to imply a social negativity, I would argue that the largest stigma around buses is built around the idea of not wanting to be around poor people, because as it appears, only poor people take the bus. And while there might be a depressing truth to this statement, it's an incredibly classist and narrow-minded way of thinking. And it's a way of thinking that could be easily dispelled if public transit services were improved and marketed towards a larger audience. There are many ways of going about this, none of which I'll be discussing in this video, but understand that improving public transit helps everyone. The cost might seem high at times, but the benefit it produces greatly outnumbers the cost. It's better for the environment, it's better for the economy, and it's better for the people. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. People need buses.